the job that taught an unexpected truth. Some lessons don't arrive as advice. They arrive as experiences, quiet, unremarkable on the surface, yet powerful enough to change how we see our entire working life. This story begins with a job that seemed ordinary, even forgettable, but ended up revealing a truth that reshaped everything. At the time, they didn't expect much from the role. It wasn't a dream position. It wasn't a bold move. It was simply the next logical step. In a world where careers are often defined by strategy and ambition, this kind of choice feels safe. And safety, they believed, was enough. The job fit their skills. The responsibilities were clear. The expectations were reasonable. From the outside, it looked like a sensible decision. Another rung on the ladder, another line added to a growing resume. But today, as more people question what work is truly meant to give them, this story matters because it reveals how clarity can arrive from the places we least expect. In the beginning, everything felt fine. The days moved smoothly. Tasks were completed. Feedback was positive. Yet beneath the routine, something subtle began to surface. Not dissatisfaction, not frustration, just a quiet awareness that something important was missing. They noticed it during moments that should have felt satisfying. Finishing a project, meeting a deadline, receiving praise. Each moment landed, then faded, leaving behind a strange emptiness. It wasn't that the work was meaningless. It simply wasn't meaningful to them. At first, they dismissed the feeling. Not every job is meant to inspire. Some are meant to support, to stabilize, to provide. But as weeks turned into months, the feeling didn't disappear. It sharpened, and with it came a question they hadn't expected to ask themselves. What if doing something well isn't the same as doing something that matters? That question would become the beginning of an unexpected lesson, one that would quietly redefine how they thought about work, purpose, and the direction of their future. The question lingered, reshaping how they experienced each day. They began to notice the gap between competence and connection. They were effective, reliable, even respected, but emotionally distant from the work itself. The job required focus, but it didn't invite curiosity. It demanded consistency, but not creativity. And slowly, that distinction began to matter more than they expected. They observed how easily the days blended together. Weeks passed without leaving a clear impression. The work was completed, the outcomes achieved, yet nothing felt anchored to a sense of purpose. It was as if time moved forward without leaving a mark. That realization unsettled them, because it revealed how much of life can be spent simply maintaining momentum. The conflict deepened when they compared this role to moments in the past that had truly energized them, times when effort felt meaningful, when challenges sparked growth instead of fatigue. Those memories highlighted what was missing now. Not success, but engagement. Not achievement, but alignment. Still, they hesitated to draw conclusions. After all, the job was stable. It paid well. It offered security. Questioning it felt indulgent, even ungrateful. They reminded themselves that fulfillment was a luxury, not a requirement. But the truth kept resurfacing in quiet ways, through a lack of excitement, through a growing sense of detachment, through a feeling that they were present in body but absent in spirit. The unexpected truth began to take shape during a simple interaction. They watched a colleague speak passionately about a project, fully engaged, alive with interest. The contrast was striking. It wasn't about talent or position. It was about connection. That moment revealed something they hadn't fully understood before. Work could be more than something you endure or perform. It could be something that resonates. That realization carried weight. It suggested that fulfillment wasn't accidental. It was intentional. And if intention was missing, no amount of competence could replace it. The job they once saw as sensible was quietly teaching them a lesson they hadn't planned to learn. Doing well is not enough if the work doesn't speak to who you are becoming. The lesson grew heavier as they became more aware of it. Every completed task reinforced the same realization. They were functioning, not flourishing. The work asked them to perform, but it never asked them to care. And once they noticed that absence, it was impossible to ignore. The internal conflict sharpened. On one side was logic. The job was dependable, respectable, and safe. Walking away from it felt unnecessary, even reckless. On the other side was a growing discomfort that refused to stay quiet, a sense that they were spending their best energy on something that didn't reflect their values or stretch their potential. The tension between these two truths followed them everywhere. They tried to reframe the situation. Maybe fulfillment was overrated. Maybe work wasn't meant to be meaningful, just manageable. But that belief didn't hold. Each time they imagined years passing the same role, the vision felt dim and constricting, not painful, just empty, and emptiness, they realized, could be just as dangerous as failure. The conflict reached its peak during an otherwise routine moment. They were finishing a project they had executed flawlessly many times before. As they reviewed the final result, they felt nothing. No pride, no excitement, no sense of accomplishment, just completion. That absence of emotion hit harder than frustration ever could. In that moment, clarity arrived. The job wasn't teaching them what they could do. It was teaching them what they needed. They needed work that challenged their thinking, that engaged their curiosity, that felt connected to something larger than output and approval. The unexpected truth wasn't about quitting or staying. It was about understanding what kind of work they could no longer accept. That realization changed the stakes completely. Staying in the job now meant consciously choosing disengagement. And once they understood that, the comfort offer began to feel far less secure. The lesson was no longer subtle. It was demanding a response. The response didn't come as an impulsive exit. It came as a shift in awareness. They understood that the job had served its purpose, not as a destination, but as a mirror. It had shown them, with quiet honesty, what they could no longer ignore about themselves and their future. Once that truth settled in, their perspective changed. They stopped trying to force meaning into work that wasn't designed to hold it. Instead, they began asking better questions. What kind of problems did they want to solve? What kind of effort energized them instead of draining them? What kind of work would still matter even when no one was watching? Those questions guided their next steps. Slowly, intentionally, they explored paths that aligned with the answers. They followed curiosity instead of convenience. They chose growth over comfort. And with each small decision, the direction of their life began to shift. When they eventually moved on, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like graduation. The job that once seemed ordinary had delivered an extraordinary lesson. Fulfillment is not a bonus you earn after success. It's a signal that you're moving in the right direction. Without it, no amount of stability can make work sustainable. Looking back, they were grateful for the experience. Not because it was inspiring, but because it was clarifying. It taught them to recognize the difference between doing something well and doing something that matters. And that distinction became the compass they would use for every decision that followed. Sometimes the job that teaches you the most is the one that shows you exactly what you don't want and points you quietly toward what you truly need. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.